"David, you're making a mistake." Esther's voice trembled with urgency as she watched David pace back and forth in his small office. Papers were scattered everywhere, the aftermath of yet another risky business deal that David had jumped into without fully understanding the stakes. David waved her off, his face set in determination. "You worry too much, Esther. Chief Richard knows what he's doing. He's been in this game longer than any of us. I trust him." Esther sighed, her frustration barely contained. "It's not about Chief Richard, it's about you. You're relying on others to guide you because you don't have the knowledge yourself. Please take some time to learn. Understand what you're getting into before it's too late." David stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes flashing with defiance. "I'm not some naive child, Esther. I know what I'm doing. I don't need a degree or a pile of books to tell me how to succeed. What I need is guts, and I've got plenty of that." Esther's heart sank. She had seen this before, the arrogance, the overconfidence. She loved David deeply, and their engagement was a promise of a future together. But she knew that if he didn't change his ways, he was heading for disaster. "Just because you have guts doesn't mean you're invincible," she whispered, more to herself than to him. David, however, was already lost in his thoughts, planning his next move, convinced that he was on the brink of greatness. The months that followed were a whirlwind. David's business seemed to be thriving, with deals coming in from all sides. Chief Richard was a constant presence, guiding David with what seemed like fatherly advice. James, David's best friend, was always by his side, encouraging him to take bigger risks to reach higher. But Esther could see the cracks forming. She watched as David made decision after decision without fully understanding the implications. He was playing with fire, and she knew it was only a matter of time before he got burned. One evening, after another long day of work, Esther tried to talk to David again. "David, have you even looked into the details of these deals? Do you know who you're getting involved with?" David barely looked up from his laptop. "Esther, you worry too much. Everything's under control. Chief Richard wouldn't steer me wrong." Esther clenched her fists, feeling a mix of fear and frustration. "But you're not asking the right questions. You're not learning what you need to know. You're just trusting people blindly." David's expression darkened. "You don't understand, Esther. This is how business works. You have to take risks. You have to trust people." Esther shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not about trust, David. It's about knowledge. And you're lacking it." But David was too deep into his own world to listen. He was convinced that he was on the fast track to success, and nothing, not even Esther's pleas, could make him see the truth. The first signs of trouble were subtle. A deal that didn't go as planned, payment that was delayed. Chief Richard began to distance himself, his advice becoming less frequent, less supportive. James, too, started to pull away, making excuses for why he couldn't meet up or help with certain projects. David, however, pushed forward, refusing to see the warning signs. He doubled down, taking even bigger risks, convinced that he was just one step away from achieving everything he'd ever dreamed of. Then the inevitable happened. A major deal fell through, one that David had bet everything on. Overnight, his business crumbled. Investors pulled out, clients disappeared, and debts mounted. David was left standing in the ruins of his once promising empire, staring in disbelief at the destruction he had caused. For the first time, he realized that he had been out of his depth all along. The knowledge he had dismissed as unnecessary was exactly what he had needed to avoid this catastrophe. David sat alone in the small, empty office that had once been bustling with activity. The silence was deafening. His mind replayed every decision he had made, every warning he had ignored, every piece of advice he had brushed aside. "It was me all along," he whispered, the weight of the realization crushing him. His greatest enemy had not been Chief Richard, James, or even the competitors who had outmaneuvered him. It had been his own ignorance, his refusal to acknowledge that there was so much he didn't know. He had lost everything: his business, his friends, and even Esther, who had finally given up trying to save him from himself. With tears streaming down his face, David knew that he had only one choice left. He needed to rebuild, but this time he would do it the right way. He would seek out the knowledge he had once dismissed, and he would approach life with humility and a willingness to learn. Moral of the story: David's journey was a painful one, but it taught him the most valuable lesson of all. Knowledge is power, and ignorance is the greatest enemy. The lack of knowledge had been David's undoing, leading him down a path of destruction that he couldn't see until it was too late. The moral of the story is that no matter how talented or ambitious you are, without the knowledge to guide your decisions, you will always be at risk of falling victim to your own ignorance. True success comes from a combination of courage, wisdom, and a constant pursuit of learning. Only then can one avoid the traps that life sets and truly rise above their circumstances. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.